We'll give you our 10 when the meeting's over.
Okay. I thought you were collecting.
We'll call the meeting of the Committee on Fiscal Affairs for September 3rd to order. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes for the meeting of June 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
There is no real agenda for taking action at this meeting today other than to receive a report, a very important report, from Vice Chancellor Malave about the status of the state budget and the city budget. So before we start, I would like to congratulate Ernesto and his entire staff for the bulletin that was put out a week or so ago. It's extraordinary, and I think I emailed you or someone about this as well. I think it's a great report.
Thank you very much.
As opposed to the news.
As opposed to the news.
Oh, the layout is wonderful. You read it?
I promise the news will get better.
Nice chart.
Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. It was June, I think it was the last time we met. And seems like it was just yesterday, but it was June. And first I want to just bring you up to date on what has happened since June. And many of you know that in part because I've been providing you some of the information via the bulletin, and we've all been reading the newspapers and we know what's going on. Since June, there was a major budget erosion in the state of New York, resulting in the governor reopening the budget for not only the City University of New York, but the State University of New York and all of New York. In the first bulletin that I sent you, in fact, what I provided for you today is the bulletin that was just released today. That speaks to exactly what the governor and the legislature did on August 19th. The governor called an extraordinary session of the legislature to reopen the budget and asked the legislature to consider an additional $600 million in reductions to the state budget on top of the $630 he had already handled administratively. For both CUNY and SUNY, that represented an additional reduction of $147 million, $50.6 million for CUNY senior colleges. The governor had proposed up to $8.2 million in cuts for the community colleges, which were not enacted, but they were nevertheless on the table. The legislature returned and worked with the governor to achieve savings of $427 million, including accepting the $50.6 million in cuts for the City University of New York. That was clearly on the face of it a substantial reduction, and it was linked to the fact that the State University of New York was being asked to sustain a cut of $96.6 million, and this was their way of achieving parity with the State University of New York. That's the bad news. The good news for the system is that back in June, when we reported to you on the adopted budget, we also recognized that there was significant risk associated with the adopted budget, and it was not unlikely that they would be coming back to Albany at some point. We, at that time, thought it would be after the election, not before the election, to reconsider budget issues. And the university was planning for it, so while we clearly didn't plan on a $50.6 million budget reduction, we were planning on having to deal with some budget erosion. And working closely with the governor's budget division, we were able to identify $32 million in revenues, both in reserves and in shifting ways of acquiring equipment acquisitions to the capital budget to come up with $32 million to offset the $50.6 million. So that at the end of the day, the reduction to the senior colleges was substantial. $18.6 million is still a lot of money, but something that the university could manage in a way that we would be able to maintain the core academic programs, not have to cancel any class sections, and not have to reduce any core student services. And we're very fortunate to be able to work with the governor to achieve that. And so that's part of the good news in this financial disclosure bulletin, that while we faced a challenge, we were able to work closely with our colleagues to meet that challenge. And how are we going to meet the challenge? The $18.6 million is going to be met in the following ways. I indicated earlier that we had already planned for it, and we had advised the colleges to set up a reserve of 1.5% in anticipation of this eventuality, and it came out close to that number. So the colleges already had $14 million in their budgets to be able to apply against the $18.5 million. The rest of the funds, the 4.7, we're generating through savings and fringe benefits associated with the pause. Let me explain what the pause is. The chancellor had ordered, as soon as the budget situation became a little bit uncertain, a pause in the hiring of full-time replacements other than full-time faculty and direct student services. That is going to generate savings in the operating side. That is going to generate resulting or related savings in fringe benefits that we're going to apply against the 18.6. And then we're going to take $2 million in funds that had not yet been allocated to the colleges from lump sums and apply that against the $18.6 million. So the colleges are not going to have to sustain any more reductions in their budgets other than what they had set aside in reserves in the initial operating budget. And so I think we'll be able to do that with making additional 5% cuts in OTPS and continuing the slow down on the replacement of administrative personnel. So that's how we get to the 18.6. The community colleges were spared any real cuts on the state side. We got a cut of $640,000, most of it against a rental account that was already overfunded to begin with, so we don't really have anything to worry about that. Let me explain that for a second, what I mean by overfunded. When we issued our budget request at the time, the MCC was planning on leasing a much larger space than it ultimately leased. The state of New York had budgeted us for the larger space, anticipating that we would enter into a lease. Well, we didn't enter into the lease, but yet the appropriation was still there. And so we're able to take most of that was unspent against the cut of $640,000 at the community colleges. And we're not going to have to make any cuts to the community colleges as a result. See, the news gets better as we move along.
It's the next phone call.
Right. But having said all that, the outlook still remains a little bit uncertain. I mean, after all, nobody expected the governor to call a special session in the manner in which he did. And so it wouldn't shock any of us if we get surprising news on the economic front that would require a relook. And so we're going to keep a careful eye on it. We're a little optimistic, having given up $68.3 million in 1 year, that they're not going to visit us again. But you never know, and you have to stay close to the situation, and we will stay very close to the situation. So that's where we are on the state side. The one remaining big uncertainty is the city side. The mayor's has a budget that's balanced for the current year. Nevertheless, like the state of New York, the revenues for the city of New York are not stable. They're going in one direction, and it's not up. And right now, no doubt, the folks at the Office of Management and Budget are sharpening their pencils for a November modification. And what that means is that we're likely to be asked to engage in an exercise of budget reductions. Last year was a good year, relatively speaking, for the city of New York with respect to the budget, and CUNY had to sustain a $5.6 million reduction. So none of us anticipate that we're not going to be asked to participate in some kind of exercise to reduce spending in the city side for the community colleges. It's uncertain because, one, we don't know exactly what the level will be, and of course the city council will have to weigh in on that, and they have not yet spoken, in part because the mayor has not yet issued any recommendations. But we're watching it very closely, but we do expect to have some kind of budget pressure like we did last year at the community colleges. But like the senior colleges, we're also working on contingencies with the budget office and others to make sure that we are in a position to respond in the event that we have to respond to any major budget pressure. So that's where we are with the city and the state budgets. If anyone wants any questions before I move on to some of the other budget issues, I'd be very happy to.
I just have, first of all, I think you and your staff have done an excellent job, again, in managing this whole situation and just ensuring that the hurt is, it doesn't hurt as much. But the one question that I have is regarding SUNY, and I'm just wondering, how is SUNY being treated during this whole situation compared to us?
Well,
and is the playing field level or what?
They were cut first, and the cut to us was to level it.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that SUNY is they're being treated twice as bad as we are because they're twice as big as we are, and so they're right now staring at a $96.6 million mid-year reduction. That was on top of their $36.7 million reduction, I think it was, and so they have big problems as well. And in fact, our number of 50.6 was pegged to their numbers. So and the way they did that is because of the nature of the budget structure in the state of New York or SUNY, they could manage their budget, reduce their budget without legislative approval. So they just did it. And they needed to, the governor's office needed to get the legislature to weigh in and accept the CUNY reduction consistent with that. So I think it's fair to say that they're being treated equitably, which means that they got to cut twice as large as we are. And they're dealing with it as well. I'm sure they're having a difficult time, as we all are. But I think it's fair to say that they're dealing with it, you know. In fact, let me also say, because I did get a report the other day, they're going to their finance committee on September 11th to present a plan to the trustees on how they're dealing with their budget. So we'll have more specific information probably next week on exactly how they're handling it. I know their number, I don't know how they're handling it yet.
It just seems that the way that we're handling it is, is a model, quite frankly. And I'm just wondering if, the state realizes and is giving us the credit for the model way that we're handling this. I mean, I'm not trying to be self-aggrandizing, but I think that we're talking about fiscal management here. And I just think that we're doing some things where we're getting ahead of this in a way that's very productive.
I'll do this instead of Ernesto, because he won't do this forcefully, because it's his good management. The state's very aware, and very appreciative of the way we're handling this. They've told us this repeatedly, both in writing and verbally.
Okay. Well, that's important, because we need to make sure that, and this helps, because we shouldn't just be doing things in the dark. This helps to educate people.
Phil, part of your question was, are we getting credit for it? We're getting credit for the approach that we're taking, but I don't think, and I'll speak for myself, I'll let others do it. I don't believe it's long-term credit that they're going to look favorably in the future. When the cuts come again, we're going to be on the list, and I don't think just because you did well last time.
Yeah, because I was sort of leading to that, which I think that you very astutely picked up, and that is that will that give us any credit later, when we're coming again before.
Having been involved in budget exercises, as Mark has been, we used to, the city level called it PEG, a program to eliminate the gap, and every time you had a PEG program, it was the first time through, every time. What you did last time with very little bearing.
Yeah, what have you done for me lately?
Right.
Thank you.
The hope would be that during a better budget period, they'll remember that we were good citizens the state side. They'll remember that we were good citizens, and they'll be helpful with this money again.
Well, we're going to do everything to shatter that model of whether they're going to be good, and we'll know very soon, because we're going to be approaching the development of the, and I'll just move right into the development of the 2010 budget message. And
Before you go, can I ask you
Sure, of
another
course.
question on, back in June at our last meeting, relatively minor point, but in terms of dollars, but there was a discussion about how at that point, I guess, state budget had frozen some of the fee revenues, the technology fee line.
right.
Did that end up getting cut in this exercise? 'Cause
What happened with that, and I should have reported on that, thank you for reminding me. The last time we reported at this committee that we were raising the technology fee, and that as a result of the way in which the state of New York was in effect restricting the spending of special revenue funds, it would be problematic. We made a decision at the university to exempt the technology fee revenue from any holdback. And so to the extent that there would be some holdback on special revenue funds, we directed it to be held in other areas, so that whatever fees we would generate, we would fully expend the fees in that manner. So the state didn't do anything to relieve of the revenue restrictions. We took it upon ourselves to exempt the technology fee revenue from being rescinded in any way.
Okay, so it's not.
Right, we took care of that,
not an
right, it's not an issue anymore.
Thanks.
So a couple of things are going on. The state has made it very clear that they are accelerating the budget-making process, so that they anticipate that, we'll be engaged in discussions with the budget division on the development of the 2010 budget sooner rather than later. Normally, this committee and board would be at the November meeting of the board considering a budget message for next year. We would be laying out a set of numbers, reflecting our budget priorities consistent with the master plan. That is likely to be accelerated. So it wouldn't surprise me if I would, perhaps be in communications with you in writing regarding budget-making developments, because the governor's office may accelerate them and give themselves greater chances to, or greater opportunities to craft next year's budget. But I think it's very clear that it's going in one direction. They're going to continue their austerity measures at least for the next 18 months, I would imagine, if not longer, so that the 010 budget, and they're getting everybody ready for it, the 010 budget is one that is likely to be where they're going to be reducing our budgets, and hopefully from a larger base, but they're going to be reducing our budgets. And in view of that, we're going to be, and we've already started with discussions with the Council of Presidents Committee on Fiscal Affairs. I'm going to be engaging in discussions with the Faculty Senate Budget Advisory Committee, with the University Student Senate on crafting the message. But it's also going to be very clear that we're not going to be, like last year and the year before, asking the state of New York for significant sums of money in this budget environment. We're not going to do that. We're going to seek to meet our needs. Obviously, we're going to try to get all the mandatory needs funded by the state of New York to the extent that they can. And we're going to be pursuing with the development of the compact and a revenue approach like we have for the past couple of years of a tuition policy that will allow us to make the kind of investments that we need to make. What that will look like, how it's going to be crafted is something we'll be working on over the next month. And we'll be coming to this board in November, the Committee on Fiscal Affairs in November. With that, you'll be getting an opportunity, and I'll send it to you in advance for a couple of weeks. We can have discussions. I said we will be discussing it with the faculty and others. But it's going to be one that it's going to be a minimal investment plan funded through a variety of sources, and the compact being the central vehicle that they will use. And hopefully the governor will embrace some of the other recommendations of the Commission on Higher Education on both the capital side and the operating side, in helping deregulate the environment for the university. It doesn't cost the state of New York any money, but allows us to move forward. And between now and that time, which is a couple of months from now, we'll be engaging with the executive to have at least as best, and we'll test that theory of whether or not we're going to get credit, and we'll know sooner rather than later. We're going to make every effort, as we always do, with the executive to get the best possible showing, and then of course then move to the legislative side of the house and allow them to weigh in as well. But that's the timetable, the November meeting of the board, and before then you're going to be getting materials by mail on exactly what kind of investment program we're looking for. Okay. Anything on the budget before?
I thought when you said that you anticipate the process being accelerated, that the budget request would be on the October fiscal committee.
Well, we don't have scheduled meeting in October of the board, Jay, is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh, I thought we did September, October, then December.
No,
We're
it's-
doing September, November. Oh, I think
Right.
it's when it's scheduled.
Right, but for the, and the fact of the matter is, developments will dictate,
Right,
how we proceed, and we need to,
have a special meeting.
we'll do what we have to do
Right,
to clearly engage the trustees in, as they must be engaged in the consideration and the approval of the budget message.
so we would not be using an executive committee of this board, but rather the Fiscal Affairs Committee and the hearing?
I'm not in a position
I would hope.
to speak to that, because that would depend on the timing, the circumstances.
Well, I, for one, can make a meeting just about I would make it my business too.
Okay, well, we'll find out soon enough whether or not I'm just simply suggesting from what I've heard in the executive, that they want to accelerate the
Yes.
process, what that means. It's hard for me to know exactly.
Just the world politics, I doubt that the state, either at the executive level or the legislative, clearly at the legislative level, do anything before the November election. That's November 5th, 4th, whatever it
At
is.
this point, they're campaigning.
They're campaigning, Senate control
That's
is
a very
a
good
big
point.
issue.
That
They're
is a good point.
in a whole
Yes.
different, they're in the politics
That's right,
mode,
yeah.
not the governing mode.
Okay, I wanted to just move, before I come up with a final report on the investment, and ask Janet to come up to the table, in the bulletin, just to report some good news. And I wanted to report on the year end. We haven't quite ended the year, right, Matt? We've got a couple of days before lapsing. But I wanted just to report the good news. We had a very good year last year, and with the compact spending and and very robust enrollment. We were able to hire, in 1 year, about 280 new net full-time faculty at the colleges throughout the university. And over the past 2 years, as a result of the compact, hired 354 new full-time faculty. And those were just on the faculty alone. There were also investments in student services. And on page 3, or on page 6 of the bulletin, you don't have to go through it now, you'll see exactly where it is. You know, John Jay, Karen, as you know,
Yes.
you know, led the pack with 69 new faculty
Uh-huh.
over the past 2
They're
years,
wonderful, just fabulous.
which is about a 24% increase in the number of full-time faculty at John Jay.
Yes.
And that's in part driven by the President Travis there and his leadership to move things forward and the cooperation of the faculty. And
Yes.
Queens College and Hunter and New York City Tech all had strong gains in full-time faculty hires. The community colleges, you know, hired a little bit less so because they were engaged in budget cutting exercises for some part of the year, but they were also able to hire very strongly.
Paul, Janet's coming up for her.
Yeah.
Any preliminary report on enrollment for this semester?
Well, on page 5 of that, one of the reasons that we had a strong year, in part, was not only that we had the compact revenues, but we also had additional revenues associated with enrollment gains. As you can see, the enrollment gains were 3.3% at the seniors, very strong at the communities, and a number of colleges, particularly City College, growing at nearly 9%, 8.5% enrollment growth at City College.
This is enrollment for FY08. Define that for me.
Right, that would be the fall of 2007.
Right.
And the one that just ended.
Right.
And all indications are from the preliminary report that we received from Bob Tatch's office, the Director of Enrollment Management, that the very strong growth of last year is going to continue and probably accelerate into fall 2008. And so we expect that to be very good for some colleges. The Chancellor and others are very concerned that, you know, some of our campuses are in a position either through physical limitations or resources, because even if you have the space, sometimes you don't have the instructional firepower of full-time faculty, and you have to be very careful how many students you allow to come in. So it's a challenge for the university, but it's a good challenge to be in a position to have many students who want to come to CUNY and find CUNY attractive, and so that's an extremely positive development.
Budget assumption, building the budget for this year, do we look at it flat or up a little or up down a little?
Well, clearly if this rate of enrollment growth continues, that'll add approximately $25 million in additional revenue to the senior colleges, to a system in managing this is after you net out the costs associated with the additional costs associated with you know, another 9,000 students coming in, and the additional adjunct and faculty costs. But as we all know, the marginal cost of that 12,000 students is not as much, and you'll be able to use that revenue to meet other operating needs.
I'll talk to Jay later, but I think, Jay, from a public relations standpoint, it's also a double-edged sword. Announcing more students, more revenue could wake up somebody on the second floor in a way that says, okay, let's share it with Albany. So,
Well,
These
we'll
are-
do everything we can to
Right.
stop that.
These are FTEs.
Those are FTEs.
Right.
All right. Any other questions on the budget? All right. I'm going to let Janet Crone, who's given me, and I think you have before you.
Yes.
we do?
You don't have before you.
Yes.
We do.
No, we don't.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought you also had the memorandum that she provided me, but that's okay.
No, no.
You can speak to it.
Yeah, sure.
Janet Crone, our Chief Investment Officer, you're on. Can you please let us know where
Thank
we
you
are
very
and where we're going?
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you know, when we last met, approval was given to hire Cambridge Associates as the investment consultant for the long-term investment pool. The fully executed agreement took place at the end of July. And since then, we've been very busy working on all of the preliminary planning for the investment policy review, which will set the stage for a revised investment and spending policy, as well as a revised asset allocation and investment structure. We're in the process of putting reports together on all of these pieces, which we will discuss with the subcommittee on investments during the month of October. We feel that this is a good time to be repositioning, thinking about the portfolio in terms of the diversification, and looking for the opportunities to reposition the portfolio for opportunities not only over the next 1 to 2 years, but longer term, given what's happening in the markets globally and the economic situation globally. In terms of the portfolio, when we last met, we were experiencing a bounce in the portfolio due to the rescue of Bear Stearns. We've since given that up, and the portfolio is essentially about even since when we last met. It stands at $154 million and is down over the last 3 months about 20 basis points. I don't know if you want to get into the various sectors of the portfolio that have contributed to that slight decline, but I could go through that. For the 3 months ended June, the domestic equity portion of the long-term pool actually experienced a gain of 73 basis points. That would be compared to the Russell 3000, which is an index which is composed of large and small capitalization domestic equity stocks, which was down 170 basis points. So we actually added value of over 240 basis points in the domestic equity area. In our international asset allocation, we actually underperformed the MSCI EPA index by about 232 basis points. In the fixed income area, where we benchmark ourselves against the Lehman Brothers aggregate, the portfolio was down about 55 basis points against the Lehman, and the convertible position actually added 160 basis points. So in totality, given the asset allocation weights, as I said, we were just 20 basis points down over that 3-month period. So we're looking forward to meeting with you in
October
November
6th,
and
right, is
discussing.
the meeting of the
First
investment
meeting,
committee?
right.
Yes.
On the international portfolio was down 230
Yes.
basis points. What led to that particular piece?
In that particular piece, I think that there was somewhat of a lag in the markets outside of the U.S. In terms of their economies going down after the U.S. economy. And so we were starting to see more of that, and certainly had, in the last 3 months, you started to see a decline in some of the sectors that had been experiencing gains, such as the commodities and the global fixed income. So,
Is there a large portion of our funds in that particular fund?
well, I think it's the lack of. We have a lack of exposure to commodities and real assets, so that's where we really suffered.
And I think we're probably going to change some of that.
With the mix.
One of the Cambridge Associate recommendations is likely that we, diversify our portfolio and occupy some space in other areas so that we could benefit from that and guard ourselves against some of the downturns that, right now we're pretty much exposed to. Okay, any questions?
Any questions? Trevino? Anything else for the committee?
Just that we've raised, as of yesterday, $1.35 billion in our campaign, and we'll be announcing a $3 billion target
Thank you, John.
October 22nd. So we'll have more money to give you to invest.
Great. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. See you next month. Next month?
Month after.
Hey,
Thanks for
month after?
Yeah,
I still don't know what I'm going to talk about.
Well,
We'll take it.
I'll give you a,
You can? What's for lunch? I want people to eat while I talk. I learned that trick a long time ago. People don't listen. And they use it.
An open bar, so.
Next up.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you a,
Actually, the biggest.
I came over when it wasn't. That just doesn't work.
Oh, so is it possible for me, besides these copies? Or is that asking too
how
much?
many you said you needed?
Yeah, well, I'll follow you.
40.